Hello and welcome to the No One Asked You podcast. This series I am once again joined by my wonderful co-host, That Darn Kitty.
Dorkus and I are sharing our experience reading The Way of Kings for the first time. Each episode we will summarize what we've read and discuss the experience along the way.
This is Storming the Archives, The Way of Kings, and today we discuss Chapter 15.
Chapter 15!
Chapter 15. The Decoy. Adolin oversees the cleanup long after the Chasm Fiends' attack. The bridge back to the war camps were destroyed during the fight. Dalinar's surgeons attend to the injured. In fact, Dalinar had insisted everyone stay until the injured had been tended to. Nearly 50 men dead, and twice that injured. Adolin is frustrated Elhokar brushed off their deaths, as if forgetting he had nearly been among them. Adolin watches his father gaze wistfully out over the plateau. While rumors of Dalinar's weakness seem to have stopped, Adolin is confident that they will begin again soon enough. He yearns for more glory for himself and his father. Sighing, Adolin heads off to give the final casualty report. Dalinar stares off into the east, reflecting on the war against the Parshendi, and on his role in their current predicament. Nearly 6 years ago, Dalinar had been the one to suggest trapping their enemy on the Shattered Plains. Surely they'd run out of supplies eventually. It was an excellent plan, except for the gem hearts. Dalinar looks upon his son with pride. He notes his hair as an inheritance from his mother, though all memory of her had been excised from his memory. He's incapable of remembering her. He moves on from Adolin and views the corpse of the Chasm Fiend, taking note of the mysterious spren that only seemed to appear near freshly killed great shells. A gem heart is valuable enough to cover a High Prince's expenses for a month. The larger ones are less likely to shatter when used by a soulcaster. Dalinar notes it would be possible to take turns using gem hearts, but competition is the Alethi way. Vorinism teaches that the finest warriors have the holy privilege of joining the heralds after death, where they would fight to reclaim the Tranquiline Halls from the Voidbringers. Dalinar is only now starting to worry about the war and his role in hastening the events that led them here. Although they make headway against the Parshendi, the original goal of the war, vengeance, is nearly forgotten. He estimates the war could take another 6 years. The Parshendi had never given an answer to the question, why did they assassinate King Gavilar? Dalinar thinks he's the only one left asking the question. He ponders the visions, wondering if it was truly the Almighty whispering that he must unite them. Sadeas interrupts Dalinar's quiet contemplation with an emotive expression, meaning his part was done. Dalinar, taking the cue, goes to find Valma, another High Prince, though he's cut off from his search when Elhokar beckons him over. Instigated by Elhokar, Dalinar and Sadeas compare the amount of gem hearts won, with Sadeas easily coming out on top. Elhokar notes that Sadeas's bridges are more efficient. Dalinar responds that he's won his fair share of skirmishes, then thinks that he doesn't care about the damn gem hearts. Elhokar attempts to convince Dalinar to switch his bridge methods, but Dalinar notes the codes dictate a general may not ask a man to do anything he would not do himself. He then takes the opportunity to take a jab at the way Sadeas runs his bridge crews. Elhokar and Sadeas show a shocking degree of disregard for the value of the bridgemen's lives, believing them less valuable than a soldier's life. Dalinar thinks on his brother's last words. "You must find the most important words a man can say." A quote from the ancient text, The Way of Kings. "Regardless, surely you can't argue how effective my method has been," Sadeas says. "Sometimes the prize is not worth the costs. The means by which we achieve victory are as important as the victory itself." Dalinar's response shocks everyone around him. It is a decidedly un-Alethi way of thinking, though Dalinar is not feeling particularly Alethi of late. Sadeas takes another jab at Dalinar, prompting Adolin to shout out in defense of his father. Sadeas insults Dalinar's 2 sons, with Dalinar responding that he is proud of them. As Sadeas begins insulting Dalinar's sons again, calling Renarin useless, Dalinar calmly and dangerously reminds Sadeas that such an insult would demand a duel in retribution, which would then shatter the Vengeance Pact. Neither seemingly back down, until Sadeas calmly walks back his insult. Neither were willing to endanger the king. Elhokar seems entirely unperturbed by the argument, believing that competition makes them all stronger, though Dalinar is coming to disagree with the idea. Sadeas manages to get in one more barb before Wit makes his way to the group, much to Elhokar's excitement. Wit had been there for hours, but only now made his way to the king. Wit begins lambasting Sadeas, much to Sadeas' dismay. He poses a riddle to Sadeas, who fails, only for Renarin to take up the challenge successfully. As Sadeas' anger grows, Dalinar notes that killing the king's wit is legal, at the cost of one's title and lands. Sadeas storms off, with Elhokar following, but not before he checks to see if Dalinar had an opportunity to look into something for him, to which he responds with his intention to do so presently. Adolin and Dalinar inspect the leather strap which had broken from Elhokar's saddle during the fight with the Chasm Fiend. Neither man is an expert leather worker and are unable to offer a definitive explanation for why it had broken. Adolin expresses concern over the king's paranoia, but Dalinar is determined to do as ordered, then points out the strap looks as if it could have been cut. Maybe. Adolin is frustrated what others might think of them being mere pets to the king, to which Dalinar insists that he has never cared what others say. Adolin makes the case that while they worry themselves with bureaucratic endeavors, Sadeas and the others are out fighting. Dalinar expresses his intention to enlighten Adolin about his relationship with Sadeas, then notes that if the strap had been cut, it may have been part of a larger plan that didn't work. They discuss possible high princes that would covet the throne, lay out a plan to investigate the leather strip further, and double the king's guard. Adolin takes another jab at Sadeas, which angers Dalinar. Son, you have to stop fixating on him. He likes Elhokar, which can't be said of most of the others. He's one of the few I'd trust the king's safety to. Dalinar bids Adolin follow him. The two make their way to High Prince Vama. Vama is in a foul mood. Dalinar congratulates Vama on his recent successes finding gem hearts. The two discuss Vama's plans to augment the walls of his war camp. Dalinar is less than subtle in expressing that Vama should be using Elhokar's soulcasters for the fortification, among other things. Vama takes the point and walks off. Dalinar explains that Vama had been complaining about the price to use soulcasters and had to be reminded just how much he relies on those soulcasters. As Adolin wonders what this has to do with Sadeas, Sadeas joins the two of them. Sadeas had told Vama earlier that he intended to double the price of wood. He controls the only large forest in the region. Adolin realizes that this plot was why Vama had been invited to the hunt. Dalinar wonders if they should tell the king of their plot, but Sadeas does not think Elhokar has a mind for such things. Dalinar laments Elhokar's paranoia, to which Sadeas claims it's Dalinar's overzealous role guarding him that causes the issue. Dalinar invokes the codes, but Sadeas scoffs at them, believing they are idealized nonsense. They continue to argue while Adolin watches, noting that there is genuine ire behind the arguments. Dalinar and Adolin walk off, but not before Sadeas asks if Dalinar found why Gavilar had written his final message yet. Sadeas believes Dalinar is on a foolish quest, one that's tearing him apart. Sadeas knows what happens to Dalinar during the storms. Dalinar and Adolin discuss Gavilar's final words. Have I ever told you what Gavilar's final words to me were? You haven't. I've always wondered about that night. Brother, follow the codes tonight. There is something strange upon the winds. That's what he said to me. The last thing he told me just before we began the treaty signing celebration. I didn't realize that Uncle Gavilar followed the codes. He's the one who first showed them to me. He found them as a relic of old Alethkar, back when we'd first been united. He began following them shortly before he died. Dalinar laments his and Yasna's dubious temperament regarding Gavilar's newfound interest in the codes. particularly the one about avoiding strong drink during times of war, considering he had been drunk and passed out on the night of the assassination. He blames himself for Gavilar's death. Dalinar hopes that one day, Adolin will see the importance of following the codes. Dalinar goes on to explain that Sadeas had been the decoy on the night of the assassination. In fact, it was Sadeas's plan. To Dalinar, it was the bravest thing he'd ever known a man to do. Regardless, irrational though it may be, Dalinar also blames Sadeas for not being there. They both failed their king, but both made a vow to protect his son no matter the cost. Dalinar isn't on the Shattered Plains for wealth or glory, but for the family he loves. Sadeas believes the best way to protect Elhokar is to kill the Parshendi. Dalinar believes Elhokar needs a stable throne with strong allies. Adolin is confused to hear Dalinar call Sadeas brave. He doesn't know what to make of his father hating Sadeas, but asking him not to. Adolin asks Dalinar to at least consider the possibility that Sadeas isn't as committed to protecting Elhokar as they might hope. Adolin asks what Sadeas meant about Gavilar's written message. Dalinar calls it a secret only he, Sadeas, Jasnah, and Elhokar know about. Adolin is shocked to hear that Gavilar could write. Dalinar recounts the message written with Gavilar's own blood. "Brother, you must find the most important words a man can say." The words are a quote from an ancient book called The Way of Kings. Gavilar had listened to the book near the end of his life. Jasnah had only recently discovered the source of the quote. The book was used as a guide for the Radiants. Dalinar does not know why they were Gavilar's dying words. Adolin takes this revelation as proof that Dalinar's delusions and stress about the Radiants are related to his guilt over his brother's death. Adolin wants to help his father, but he does not know how. Elhokar approaches. Adolin recalls that the king is married. The queen manages affairs back in Alethkar. The king is eager to leave, but Dalinar refuses to leave his men. They discuss the events of the hunt and the strap. Dalinar admits the strap looks as if it could have been cut, which Elhokar takes as definitive proof. Adolin is made uncomfortable by Elhokar's paranoia, as Elhokar had just wondered if someone in this very hunt was responsible. The hunt is full of Dalinar's men. Dalinar advises caution, which Elhokar takes poorly. As they discuss the hunt, Adolin notes the briefest of suspicious glances from Elhokar, causing him to wonder if Elhokar suspects them of an attempt. The king leaves, and Dalinar promises Adolin that he will talk to the king later about that suspicious glance. Adolin heads off, noting the arrival of one of Sadeas's mobile bridges. Dalinar proudly watches his son leave, then heads to the stables to check on Gallant. The horse seems ashamed, though Dalinar notes he has nothing to be ashamed of, then promises him extra feed and 2 crisp melons. Gallant doesn't usually eat extra food, but Dalinar is confident that he will tonight. He takes a different horse and rides out toward the bridge. Dalinar does not think kindly of the way Sadeas runs his bridge crews, even though they're deserters, thieves, murderers, and slaves. A quote from The Way of Kings worms its way into Dalinar's mind. A parable about a spindly man carrying a large stone on his back. No one in town helped the man. In fact, most made way for him. They didn't sympathize, merely avoiding the momentum. The parable compares the role of a monarch to the man stumbling through the town. Many give way to the king, but so few are willing to step in and help because they do not want to attach themselves to the work. The author of the parable, presumably a king, leaves their carriage to help the man with the stone, then ponders whether or not they should switch places. If a king is seen to assume the burden of the poorest of men, perhaps there will be those who will help them with his own load, so invisible yet so daunting. Dalinar is surprised to find he could remember the story with exact detail. He's listened to passages from the book every day for the last few months. Unfortunately, he still can't find a clear meaning behind the quote his brother left him. Dalinar reflects on the book's lack of popularity. Not only is it associated with the Lost Radiance, it includes stories of a king doing menial labor and says that light eyes are beneath dark eyes. That last part contradicts Vorin teachings. Dalinar determines to keep his interest in the book a secret for the time being. He nods in gratitude to the bridgemen because they bear the weight of kings, then continues on. Okay, so there are so many places to start. I think we have to start with the epigraph.
Yes, that's a good place to go. Yeah.
You do not agree with my quest. I understand that so much as it is possible to understand someone with whom I disagree so completely.
All right. So this is the continuation of that, basically that letter, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And whoever this immortal person think is he's writing to is like that person doesn't agree with his quest, and we don't know what his quest is.
Agreed. I don't know how
So
much more we can glean from that.
mm. It's still pretty. He's pretty funny.
I guess there's a certain degree of respectfulness between the two.
Mm,
Like, there are a lot of people who hold opinions that I don't hold, but I understand how and why they hold them, even if I
yeah,
disagree with them for holding them.
yeah, and yeah,
Yeah.
understands someone with whom I disagree so completely. I guess that also that theme goes into the chapter because we have Sadius and
Dalinar.
Dalinar like disagreeing on quite big things, but then at the same time they have the same goal, which it's just about how they achieve it. It is completely
Which makes me
different.
wonder if it's the same dynamic between the letter writer and whoever he's writing to.
Mm. Weird that they have the same goal, but they both think it's a different. They need to achieve it differently.
Yeah.
Mm.
I don't even know where to start with the rest of this chapter. If I have been frustrated with Well of Ascension for not giving us enough politicking, we get that in spades here.
Yeah, a lot of maneuvering, and you know what? What's cool is that we learn through Adelin's perspective because he's also not really good at this stuff, so he's learning from his father and Sadius.
Yep.
Because he it takes him a little while to figure out what's actually going on. And yeah, even though Dalinar is not exactly very subtle in his politicking, he does the
No.
job. He does what he's got to do. So yeah, that we have way more than that. But even so, we've got that, and we've got a lot of character building things. This was a very rich chapter.
Very. We get, I don't want to say kinder, but a much more in depth look at Sadius's better qualities,
Hmm.
I guess you could say.
Yeah, redeeming qualities from him.
We learn that it is very mixed. These are very nuanced characters with both good and bad. I don't like Alethi culture all that much, I gotta say.
No, yeah,
Um, and Elhokar and Sadius show a shocking disdain for life. I
life.
mean, for well, we know how they treat the Bridgemen, at least how Sadius treats the Bridgemen. But we do see now a side of Sadius that cares very much about Elhokar, and we see his bravery and so on. So that's good. One of the first things I did when I read this chapter was go back and read the prologue with Zeth because, well, I had to see that moment with Sadius, and
Hmm.
I noticed Dalinar. I noticed a lot of things I didn't notice the first time reading through it when I didn't know names or anything.
Yeah,
Um, Elhokar was talking to someone with some sort of birthmark or scar or something, and Yasna was nowhere to be seen. Gavilar asked about Sadius at the end when he was trying to figure out who plotted his assassination, although to Sadius's defense, Gavilar said, I never thought, but then he got cut off. Anyway, had to get all of that off my chest.
I actually started the audiobook, and so also that's how I re-experienced that chapter. And now I could recognize the names, and I also I had the same experience. Oh, I know that person now. Now, oh, okay, it makes sense. When we first got introduced to it, it was okay, person, interesting. We were also just focused on the action of what was happening as well, and yeah, now getting the idea that oh, just how Dalinar must feel that like he was just in his
Mm,
cups that night. I think he's worse off than Sadeas, I would say. Sadeas is just, he had a plan that failed, but he was there. Whereas Dalinar was just
Well,
all drunk.
but was he though? Because I imagine from Sadius's POV, like they didn't fall for my plan,
Mm,
and
true.
because my plan involved me not being there, I wasn't there just
Yeah.
as easily.
Yeah.
Um,
They both have this guilt. And that is something we learn a lot more about in this chapter.
yeah.
That's what unites them. Haha! Unites.
The thing is, between Dalinar's method of protecting Elhokar and between Sadius's, I'm more inclined to say that Dalinar's would probably bear more fruit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm still Team Dalinar, but I do have some more understanding for Sadius. And it could well be that Sadius doesn't think that he's in competition or bickering out on the Shattered Plains. He could still be in it for the Vengeance Pact, but uh, all the same,
Yeah, he
the
does
others
mention.
aren't. So,
Yeah, the others on. He does mention it. So we do have that whole, a lot of introspection in the POV, so we understand what's going on inside these characters' heads. And Dalinar does go, okay, so he has that thought about, yeah, well, vengeance has been forgotten. And then a little short while after that, Sadeas actually says, oh, too important for vengeance. So he characterizes, right, going after the gem hearts and things like that as vengeance. It's possible that he still sees it so, but it all just looks like a lot of time wasting and a lot of life wasting. So I am on Dalinar's side when it comes to what they should be doing. And again, I agree. I'm not such a fan of Alethi culture. It
right.
seems
So,
counterproductive.
Elhokar really seems to be fostering not competition, but outright ire and barbs and fighting more so, I think, than competition. And that cannot be healthy or sustainable, right?
Yeah, nobody trusts anybody. It leads to, look, I know all courts will have that, but it's not friendly competition at all.
Yeah, you gotta be
Uh,
subtle about it.
yeah, but it's not. But it even that, like, it's not. It's still cutthroat competition. It's still quite dangerous. It's not good-natured competition, which I would maybe be okay with.
Yeah.
It's actually it's real, proper fight amongst yourselves, and whoever is strongest wins. And yeah, that makes me go, oh, I suppose Dalinar is somewhat something of a heretic too. He's
That actually had me asking the big question. Is the reason that Yasna is considered a heretic because she has been reading The Way of Kings and has been following it or taking it to heart in some way?
yeah, and that's what I was thinking. That this seems way too similar to what we could figure out a little bit of Yasna.
Right. So,
Uh, mm,
for clarity, the Way of Kings, Dalinar thinks, has some things that are very unalethi written in it, that
mhm,
the Dark Eyes are superior, and
mhm.
so on. So, if Yasna's taking it to heart, that could be reason enough to call her heretic, I think. Possibly.
Yeah, yeah. If she is even at all seeing that these races or whatever they are, strati of people as equal, that is it is really heretical. And
Mm-hmm.
then I suppose when we, okay, so there's also the codes, which is also another thing that's not exactly heretical. It's just old fashioned. It's an ancient relic sort of thing. Um,
Right. Like if I
mm,
brought out a medieval book of chivalry and
yeah,
started
exactly.
following it.
Yeah, it's like it's not exactly like completely against everything, but it's also just like, yeah, that's mighty unnecessary. It's not something we should take seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got those two texts. Well, I suppose we could say roll credits because we got the Way of Kings.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so we've got heretic Dalinar, and we've got confused Adolin because he just wants. I think Adolin wants to be a part of the normal Alethi culture. He wants this. He
Mm-hmm.
wants glory for his father. He wants that man, and he said thinks the kingdom needs that man back. You know, needs that they need his dad as the hero to come back and be what he was. It's like, yeah, he's being a hero in a different way. I feel. I think he's having better thoughts for the kingdom than everyone else. Everyone
Right.
else just wants to mess about on the plains forever. It just doesn't seem. Oh, that made me think about your theory of like why they assassinated Gavilar.
Mm.
Or is it Gav? Is Gavilar or Galavar?
Gavilar.
I always say, yeah, I say it's
Gav.
the wrong one. Yeah, Gav. So yes, you had said like, did they do this to divide, keep the Alethi divided in the
To
face
bring.
of whatever is coming? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I mean, it sounds like it. Well, it sounds like Brandon Sanderson is leading us to form some sort of opinion of on that, because he doesn't give us an answer, and they haven't given an answer. The Parsheni have not given an answer for why they did
No.
it.
No, no, no. Dalinar has some interesting thoughts about Adolin's mom, by the way.
Yeah,
Uh,
what?
am I the only one that thought Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind over that
Yeah, like,
passage?
yeah, what the hell was that about? Oh no, but the thing is, he's not like, I don't get. He knows it's been done, and there's nothing shocking about it. It's like, yeah, that happens.
Yeah. For
Oof.
clarity, he seems literally incapable of remembering her,
Yeah.
as if she had been removed forcibly from his memory.
So what could that be? Is that this? I mean, it reminds me of, in Egypt, if some pharaoh or whatever was disgraced, they took record of that person off the walls and things like that.
I think Rome did that too.
Yeah, so things like that. Where is that why did this person do something so wrong that we have to erase them from memory? Also, how do you do that? Cool magic.
Yeah.
Also pretty sad.
Yep.
Or is that normal? Do they just do that with the females? I don't know. No, it doesn't make sense, because he's got a. If we talk about the king's wife, or over there taking care of the Alethi kingdom in itself, like,
Right.
so there. Yeah, it seems like this is a special case. I'm interested.
I did compare Vorinism to Valhalla with
Oh
regard to the
yes,
Tranquiline Halls to fight the Voidbringers.
yes.
Um,
So did I. Yeah.
but then I also thought, well, hold on a second. It kind of sounds like that's what the Heralds were doing in the
Mm,
prelude chapter, and they hated it. That was hellish to them, to the point where they gave up their oath.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. So it's like that isn't. Valhalla actually is supposed to be, yes, it is all fighting, but it's still supposed to be like some sort of glorious afterlife. But yeah, I think you've got that, hit that on the nose there. That maybe the way that they think of these halls and fighting the void bringers and whatever, the way they think of that is a bit too romanticized. It's actually really horrible. It is hell, actually.
Yeah.
Oof. That is a big deal that you just laid out there.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the strap,
Hmm.
and then segue into Wit and segue into Elokar. The strap looks as if it could have been cut.
And Elokar acts as if it is. You see, I told you. Like
Yeah.
he's like, I knew it. He actually says, I knew it.
Yeah. And he does, in fact, come off as very paranoid this chapter,
Yeah.
especially when Dalinar, who advised caution, he didn't say he didn't believe him. In fact, he seems to be leaning more towards yes than no, in my opinion. Uh,
Yeah.
but just advising caution was enough to make Elokar suspect them of
Yes.
it. And that is like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
And I love that we have that just from a look. That was cool. That we
Yeah.
just have the look, and we have the consequences of it. Like, we're like, what did you see? Did you see? Like, Adeline's like, did you see how he looked at you? Looked at us,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. Like that. That's, oh, very juicy stuff.
Yeah. And the reason I wanted to bring Wit into this conversation is Wit showed up a while ago, but he's been missing for most of the day. I
What's he been up
wondered,
to?
yeah, what's he been up to? Did he orchestrate this?
It was pointed out to us that there was this discrepancy in time, and I don't feel like that's just incidental. I think it's like you got to consider Wit. What are Wit's? He's very unknowable, this man, and very
Yeah.
smart, literally. So
And big if Wit is Hoyd, we
mm,
know that Hoyd messed around with Shy and Ashravan and sort of orchestrated that whole event. So we know it's not beyond
him,
Hoyd activity to do something like this.
yeah. Mm. Speaking of which, did you enjoy? I enjoyed his insults. My goodness,
Oh, yeah.
vicious mockery was deployed. There was a lot of damage.
Psychic
Yeah,
damage inflicted. Yep.
there was a lot of damage. I was very interested. Those were some good jabs,
And
and well done, Renarin.
yeah, he gets the say something interesting joke. It's an old joke, but it checks out.
Yeah, I like it. It was good.
Yeah. And by the way, apparently Elhokar keeps the gem heart. He didn't give it to Dalinar.
Yeah, questionable. I look. You listen. I love how they're protecting this rightful king, but Elhokar does not seem like a really great leader. He just
Yeah.
seems to be like one that everyone accepts because their purses can get fatter and whatever. They just that's why he's on top right now. It's because they allow him, and because he's supported by Sadius and Dalinar.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure, but I'm not too sure of him being. He's just the rightful king. Doesn't mean he's the right king. If you know what I'm saying.
Right.
Uh, yeah.
Um let's talk a little bit about Gavilar's last words and the Way of Kings. So
Mhm.
Dalinar is made very uncomfortable by the fact that he thinks Gavilar wrote a
Yes.
message to him. And
Mm-hmm.
again, this also leads into my I don't particularly like Alethi culture all that much. It
Yep.
really, really burned into me this chapter how impractical it seems to me to have an entire gender, particularly the leaders,
Mm-hmm.
be unable to read.
Yeah. Unable to read and write. It makes no sense to me. Like remember we there's supposed to be some sort of practicality because they use glyphs and things, but that is very minimal communication.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I mean, we know that in the real life military that's they would write. If we're just going to focus on military, it makes sense that you would have a writing system. Like it, I don't know. Maybe we didn't. We did notice it had was explained to us that women write and men don't, and women read and men don't, and that's it. Okay, but
But
we had the bookshop guy,
yeah, and
and then yeah.
he could read, I think, but it made
Mm.
no. It was the captain on the Wind's Pleasure that could read, and that made Shalon uncomfortable.
Yes, it was weird. And then it was weird, but then we also had the guy that at least interacts with books because he's a book trader, right? So yes, he does
Right.
have his wife there. So it kind of made us say, okay, this line is this is what I feel that it made this line seem not so solid. Okay,
Right.
then
And
this the way they reacted in this was quite a solid line. It's like, ooh, gross. He wrote and he could
mm-hmm.
read, and ooh, they hid it. They hid it from people because that's so shameful. A shameful secret to
Yeah.
have hidden. What?
Yeah. And if we I I so struggle to conceptualize how it would be okay for someone, a king who is in charge of leading a nation, be unable to read.
Yeah, you. That means you always have to have someone doing the reading or whatever for you, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a way to manipulate.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, somebody can manipulate the writing, absolutely,
Yep.
and forge and whatever. But it's a loophole that is quite like anyone can tell you this is what's written here. Any woman can just walk in there and go, and any person basically can just say, "Oh, this is what's written," and how are you supposed to know? It does
Yep.
seem quite impractical and silly, and it is vastly emphasized in this chapter. We have okay, so we had it in the previous chapter where they were like the women were there because they're scribes. So that's another thing they have to do. They have to run around and bring non-fighting women around to write accounts. Okay, sure, yes, you had male scribes and things like that. You have that in real life, but yeah, it's also that's a liability. These women that aren't fighting, they're just around, and then we also have them. We have made it's made sure that we notice that they are writing accounts of the battle and things like that. It
Yeah.
just yeah, and that really the most powerful thing for me was a shameful secret for him to have kept. It's like
Yeah.
that also makes me go, okay, so in Shin culture, it's normal to write for a
Yeah.
man. So Alethi are weird, man.
Very. Oh, yeah. And having reread the prologue, Zeth does have a thought that he's concerned about the rumors that the Alethi may have unlocked the secret to making shard blades, and that could mean an even larger Alethi empire. And we do know that they made shard bows, so uh,
Mm,
very concerning. I'm really glad I went back and reread that.
yeah,
Dalinar is changing because of the
yeah,
Way of Kings. For the better, I think.
yeah, and his age. He's just not. Yeah, I do think it is for the better. They are trying from the outside. It seems like a decline of age, but it's actually maturity and evolution.
Yes. Yeah. I really liked the parable that he thought
Yes.
of. He was surprised to find that he could remember it almost verbatim when he didn't feel he should be able to. And I wondered if that has to do with the Almighty speaking to him and the visions more so than his memorization skills.
Yeah, I also wondered about that. Like, why are we noting that?
Yeah.
Is it because should he be able to remember remember parts of books because they usually read to him and whatever? This is just particularly this sticks particularly with him, and is that a supernatural thing, or does it just show that he cares more about this than most things previously?
Yeah.
I don't know. Either way,
And and the parable that he thinks of definitely plays in line with this idea that perhaps the dark eyes are better than the light eyes.
hmm
And as he thinks to himself, it also reflects on the bridgeman
yes,
carrying the weight of kings.
that was beautiful. That's a beautiful line.
And they do make it a point to say that this is one of Sadius's bridge crews, which
Yes.
means Kaladin may be nearby.
Yeah, and they had bridge duty later on that day in the previous chapter. So it makes sense that I would expect it would be Kaladin would be nearby.
Yep.
And he looks at the bridgeman. Dalinar looks at the bridgeman. So I'm like,
And
is one of them?
nods.
Yeah. And remember, we had Kaladin thinking that Dalinar is probably not as cool as everybody thinks.
Yeah.
He kind of was a bit jaded about it. And one thing I also noticed in the beginning, Adolin refers to some of the soldiers being tended to by Dalinar's surgeons, and
Mm-hmm.
he says he blesses his father for bringing the surgeons, and that makes me go, whoa, wait, maybe we'll get what Dorkus wanted, where we have the surgeon Kaladin.
Hey.
Cause look, it's I just got excited with the word surgeon there and Dalinar put together, where Dalinar values his surgeons.
I
That makes
totally
sense to
didn't, but that's great.
me. It would be nice,
Yeah.
but I don't know how. How would you get all the way from Sadius's bridge crew to being in Dalinar's supervision?
Yeah.
And just
That'd
yeah, just
be
getting
tough.
yeah, getting that perspective of how horrible Sadius's bridge crew is compared to everyone else's. The fact that the way Kaladin is living now is because of this guy's
Mm-hmm.
fervor is that's a great perspective to have, because we know we've been there, we've been down in the trenches there, and then there's this guy just, oh well, yeah, they shoot at the bridges. I need them to focus on that. I gave them shields and it didn't work, so we'll just
Yep.
keep churning through people. That's fine.
They really don't care about the lives of the bridge crews at all.
Yeah. And
Um,
Dalinar does. So I'm like, yeah, Dalinar.
yeah, because one of the rules is don't ask someone to do something you yourself would not do.
Yeah.
Uh,
And he easily Sadius tries to argue against it, like, oh well, I don't eat bad food, basically, I don't eat gruel, whatever. And it's like, yeah, but you would. But I don't think you would go and run in the front, then basically just be suicidal. So
yeah.
yeah.
Talk about the horses for a bit.
Yay! I enjoyed it. It's like these horses are super intelligent. Look, horses have an emotional an EQ that really works. So I love that. But this is even more. It's like this horse understands, and can feel guilt and shame, and also then pride. I am very happy for this kind of horse to exist. That is like a higher level of equine. I absolutely enjoyed that. He's like, no, give him extra melons. Oh, but he doesn't eat. Like he already doesn't eat extra food. He knows I must stay in this physical state. This is how much I eat. I don't overeat. It's a soldier horse, and then it's like, no, you know what, you deserve it. And they understand each other. It's kind of like when we have like a dragon accepting a rider, it's the same sort of dynamic that I really enjoy. Yeah, this noble, cool, powerful beast accepts you, and you understand it, it understands you, and you create a bond. Oh, I'm here for that.
Excellent. Oh gosh, what else? The parable itself was
Mhm.
about a man walking through town carrying a boulder, and people got out of the way because they didn't want to essentially impede it and then get crushed by it. And it's similar to a king. Great stuff there.
Mhm. Also does bring on Christ imagery, Christ
Mm,
having to carry his cross, but then some people helping him, but then, yeah, coming under fire for it. Yeah, there's that. The spren that come out of the gem hearts. Did you think somehow that relates to Syl? I don't know. I'm like, I don't. What kind of spren comes out of there? It's some, like, we're noting it. We have been told about it, so we need to keep an eye on it.
right. We
Um,
know that people have never seen a death spren, but this specific type of spren only comes off of dead chasm
mhm.
fiends.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
they're very small little wisps of things. And it doesn't make sense that, like, okay, so how far would Syl have had to have gone to go from Chasm Fiend to, but then again, if they just live on and on and on, that could have occurred. I don't know, but
Yeah.
that's what came to mind. It's just a theory. It's just something that came to mind when I saw that. And also we have the mechanism of what these chasm fiends do, their life cycle is essentially that they're
Hmm.
actually supposed to go and be they go into a chrysalis, and they're on the top of the plateau so that they can be exposed to a high storm, which I suppose would break them open or charge them or something. Do you get the
Oh
sense
yeah.
that they didn't know about these things until the war?
It's possible. I didn't think about it, but through that framing, I could see it.
Because he does say, Dalinar does think he hadn't anticipated the gem hearts, and it's like, did he not anticipate their effect, or did he not anticipate their existence?
Ooh, I don't know. It could be either.
Yeah, but it seems like something as big as a gem heart monster thingy is something that you couldn't really overlook. Maybe it was just the effect, the thing that comes out of them. I don't know.
Yeah,
But yeah, chasm fiends equals important. That's all I can say.
yeah. And okay, so the only folks that know Gavilar's secret
Hmm.
message are Sadius, Yasna, Elakar, Dalinar, and now Adolin. And I recall Yasna explaining that she has been uniquely stressed with all of the projects she has taken on. I forget the exact wording when she was apologizing to Shalon, I think is the moment I'm thinking about. But
Yeah.
I'm under the presumption that she is doing everything she possibly can to research information regarding Gavilar's message.
Yeah, she's trying to find those most important words a man
Yeah.
could say. And I hope that we get a bit more insight into what that mystery is about. What has she found out so far? Because it's been 6 years. So there must be more than, oh, I don't know, uh, going on. Yeah.
Yeah. And we do know that in between that time she made the shard bows, but she may have come close to that discovery before that event because, again, Zeth had that thought about them having discovered the
Hmm.
secret to making shard blades. So
Yeah.
the timeline could be more well defined for us at some point in the future.
With them, if there's that rumor of them having maybe being close to discovering how to make shard blades, would that influence whether you start a war with them or not? I actually think that would probably, like, war drives innovation. So it actually
True.
wouldn't be a good idea to, if you were worried about the shard blades, to start a war, because then they could. I suppose you would have to have a certain kind of war that the resources are used in a certain way that would distract from them making shard blades. Maybe.
Well, I don't know what all of the other nations look like in terms of
Mm.
strength and ability. I do know that the Alethi have been fighting a war on the Shattered Plains where they have basically been using large portions of the population as arrow fodder. So
Mhm.
it's possible they might not be impossibly strong. And yeah, I would rather fight them before they discover nukes rather than after.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe that's part of it. I don't know. But we did get shard bows. But then again, remember, it's apparently not a good name to give them to, because a shard bow is not as cool as a shard blade, basically.
True. Is there anything else to say about this chapter?
Probably such a long
True,
chapter,
with
very
lots of
rich chapter,
detail.
but yeah, but I think we got to the most. We've mentioned the most notable stuff.
I think so.
Yeah.
And short of going through and reading it like we do with Ascension Unleashed, I don't know how much more I can recall at this moment.
Mhm.
Thank you all for tuning in then. Subscribe to That Darn Kitte if you have a chance. She's got a great channel. And we'll see you next week. Okay, thanks,
Okay,
bye.
thanks. Bye. I think we have a beautiful harmony at the end there.